What's a situation where you struggle to forgive someone? Story 1. The father of my child cheated on me with my mom. They are now living together as a couple. I can never forgive them. Story 2. My sister's best friends, let's call her Jane, husband. Both Jane and her husband have been family friends for years. Jane had a very successful, lucrative career. So did her husband, let's call him Cunt. After Jane got pregnant, Cunt pushed her to take some time off and just spend it with the baby. Told her there was no point in them both being overworked when they could more than get by on his salary alone. So she left her job and stayed home with the baby. 5 years later, Cunt said he wanted to move to another state, think it was Indiana, because he had a better offer. They moved. Very soon after the move, he filed for divorce. He'd been cheating on Jane since before they married. The woman he was cheating with had finally left her husband. The state they moved to has no alimony. He claims this was a coincidence. Cheating aside, the fact that he was fucking this woman on the side and still pushed Jane to leave her job, knowing this marriage probably wasn't going to last, sickens me. The fact that he decided to fuck Jane over one last time by moving to an alimony-free state before he filed sickens me. The fact that he sent our family a save the date for his impending nuptials to his side piece sickens me. The fact that I had to go over the gory details with my parents so they would understand why they can't attend, they've been friends with his parents for decades, sickens me. The whole situation sickens me. Imagine growing up alongside someone like this and having no idea what they were capable of. Story 3. My dad, 53M, had a baby with my little sister's friend, 24F. She used to have sleepovers at our house all the time when we were kids, and I can't help but wonder when he started looking at her. And that makes me feel sick, and I don't want him around my kids, just as a precaution. He's also an incredibly angry, emotionally abusive narcissist that manipulates young women to feel like he's powerful. For her side, she is a drug abuser that overdosed in front of my 14-year-old sibling, had my newest baby sister while in rehab, and both of her other children have severe health issues because of her using while pregnant, etc. So basically perfect manipulation bait for him to enable and then blame for all his problems. That plus the occasional physical abuse, and I don't think I could forgive his actions and faults to ever have a relationship with him again. Story 4. My dad seeing me as a tool to benefit his life more than a son. My entire life was about ways to better his. When my parents were separated, all he ever talked about was how he was going to get custody and he was going to get child support. He put a major emphasis on the child support. When my mom died and they were fully divorced, he was pissed her whopping $45,000 life insurance didn't go to him. But she was a state employee, and he got $2,000 a month for my sister, and that was never spent on us. He went to jail for idiotic traffic violations when I was 16 and got the payment in my name, and I never heard the end of it. When I became an adult, it was all about the father-son business ideas that of course I would have had to bankroll. Now I'm 32 with a good job and a plus 800 credit score, and it's the same song and dance and wanting me to co-sign loans. His retirement plan is living in my sister's basement or having a trailer parked on her property. Right now he's living in Oklahoma and keeps hinting about how cheap houses are. His dream is to be a slumlord owning all these properties and making money off of renters, but he'll never get a loan. He'll forever have cooked credit. I haven't forgiven him, of course he's never apologized, but he'll never get one penny from me. Also, my maternal grandma, she's just a greedy cunt who wants to hoard everything for no reason. Took my sister and I, we were 9 and 12 years old, to court for our mom's life insurance money. Took all our mom's belongings when she died. Took her car and sold it and kept the money. My paternal grandma gave my mom a mirror when she was dying of cancer, and she refuses to give it to us. But she's the victim because we don't have a relationship. Story 5. I had a major hip surgery and came back to work too soon. When I told my wife I didn't think I'd physically recovered if I kept working, she screamed back at me like I was a lowlife trying to freeload instead of a person who had worked through such pain for nearly a year pre-surgery that I was pretty much on a suicide watch. I never recovered. Story 6. I struggle to forgive my mom for my childhood. I do forgive her for a lot, but some of it was just inexcusable. I was 7, and I was supposed to go with my father and never experience anything, but my grandma said a child needs to be with her mom, despite her not even wanting me. Going to her for anything annoyed her because she did not want me. I felt stressed seeing her car when I got home. No one paid attention to me. I went weeks without brushing my teeth, showering, etc. I was 7 and didn't know better. I lived in my grandma's house with a severely disabled autistic uncle. He almost squeezed me to death on multiple occasions. It was terrifying. My mom got in a relationship with a terribly abusive man. He couldn't put his hands on me, but he would make fun of me every day and would physically abuse the family animal. I was responsible for walking the family dog at 8 years old alone. He was a pit bull/lab mix that dragged me and left me with bruises. I was responsible for walking him, and if he went inside the house his face was dragged in shit and beaten. Essentially, the dog was used as a discipline tool. You don't want to be responsible for his beatings, do you? I was extremely parentalized and basically given every household chore imaginable. Even relaxing a little was immediately reprimanded. I was told I was a spoiled, rotten kid for asking for nice Christmas gifts, and Santa only went to my dad's house. They both made great money. I was put on antidepressants because clearly something was wrong with me. I understand my mom was invisible because of my disabled uncle, but her actions are still so disgusting. While she is a victim of an abusive relationship, I don't understand why she let this all happen. Story 7. The first and most long-standing grudge I currently hold is against my absolute garbage person of an aunt. My parents divorced when I was 15, and though it wasn't pleasant by any means, it probably would have gone fairly smoothly if it weren't for her. My family was, and some still are, in an evangelical denomination that views divorce so unfavorably that my aunt felt completely justified in calling CPS over it. The investigation was wrapped up fairly quickly, but it was still nerve-wracking to be interviewed by a caseworker when I already had enough crazy emotions going on. She keyed my mom's car, though we couldn't absolutely prove it was her. She spread rumors that she completely made up off the top of her head that my mom was having an affair with my best friend's dad. The last straw, and the ultimate reason I will never forgive her, was when she told my 9-year-old little sister that our parents didn't love her in an attempt to manipulate my sister into living with her. There have been several smaller incidents with her over the last 20 years that just prove she's a shit person all the way down, and I only put up with infrequent contact with her for the sake of my absolute saint of a grandmother. Whenever she passes, knock on wood, I'll have no reason to see or speak to my aunt ever again, thank goodness. Fuck you, Aunt Marie. Story 8. Girlfriend at the time cheated on me with a close friend. Still friends with the guy, ultimately learned she lied to him that we had broken up and I had been friends with him for almost 10 years at that point, but it took time before I trusted him again. For her, I never went back to being her friend. Story 9. I really struggled to forgive a friend who spread personal information I had confided in them during a vulnerable time. It felt like a huge betrayal of trust, and it took a lot of time and introspection to move past the anger and hurt. It wasn't just about forgiving them, but also understanding the impact it had on our relationship moving forward. Story 10. I turned myself into a hospital once many years ago because I was suicidal and was put on a 7-day mandatory stay in a psych ward. I was so scared and lonely and totally regretted that decision almost instantly. It was a horrible place. My mom and sisters were like 20 minutes away. Mom told my sisters not to visit me and refused to come see me herself because she thought I needed to be there and that somehow family support would be detrimental, more likely she just couldn't be fucked. So I spent 7 days alone in that place. When I was released, I went outside onto the hospital steps hoping she might have been waiting for me to at least drive me home, but I ended up taking the bus to my apartment alone. Story 11. I was dumped last summer by my boyfriend of about 10 plus years. A so-called friend of mine who had never met him or spoken to him stalked him on FB about a month later, said some really horrible and hateful things, and only admitted she did it after being urged to by another mutual friend. She told me she was doing me a favor and took it upon herself to track him down, which would have been difficult because he used an alias on FB. Mind you, he and I parted on mostly amicable terms and hadn't spoken in well over a month before she pulled this little stunt. I still haven't totally forgiven her, and I have distanced myself from her considerably. Story 12. As an international officer of a political organization, I was very publicly falsely accused of rape, and it basically destroyed my life until I was exonerated 3 years later. Turns out my accuser falsely accused half a dozen officers in the organization of basically the same accusation as part of a dishonest political coup within the org and was finally exposed for it. My life is much better now, but some of the wounds from 3 years of a mob of people stalking and harassing me will never really heal. Lost a job, had to move, received tons of death threats. Fake social media accounts were impersonating me, a group of people tried to jump me, etc. I already had PTSD and it made things much worse. I almost committed suicide during the first of those 3 years before I was exonerated. Story 13. The treatment my mother and I got from my dad's mom and brothers when dad died, suicide. First off, his brother who lives in California couldn't be bothered to fly out for the funeral. He figured a phone call would be good enough. Second, at the funeral his other brother announced they were moving grandma out of the house close to us, where we had cared for her over the last several years, and into an assisted facility near them where we would rarely if ever see her. Grandma was all smiles, telling everyone about her new place while my dad's casket was literally 10 feet away. After the funeral we all went back to our house, where his brother decided it'd be a great time to hit mom up for the money her and dad had borrowed from grandma. They glossed over the part where mom could barely scrape up enough money for the casket and funeral, and I had sold my truck to chip in. My cousin was so distraught by the coldness of it all that she left the room. A couple weeks later I was delivering an exercise bike to my grandma's house. Mom was giving her things away to pay down the debt, and grandma said a bunch of really nasty stuff about her. That was it. Yes, mom and dad had borrowed from grandma to start a business that didn't work out, and a debt was owed, but the way they went about it when my dad's body wasn't even cold yet was horrible. We cut them off, other than sending them money, and I didn't speak with any of them again. Grandma died in a nursing home several years ago. Dad's brother in California has passed also, and the last I heard his brother that spearheaded the whole collection has severe dementia. I haven't been angry with them for a long time, but I couldn't bring myself to forgive them either. Story 14. My aunt ended her life. Her kids couldn't afford the funeral, so my other aunt paid for it, under the condition that the money and the cards given at the funeral would come back to her to help cover the expenses. My cousins took all the money. And they blamed my grandma, also their grandma, for my aunt's death, because she couldn't afford to give my aunt more money before she ended her life. My aunt was the second child my grandma lost to suicide. There were other things that happened as well, but for the last decade my cousins have refused to reach out to my living aunt, my mom, and my grandma. Their actions have divided us forever. I refuse to forgive them for how they treated my family. Story 15. Ex and I broke up. I tried to turn to a mutual friend of ours. I brought my ex into that friend group, and he just kind of never found time for me. Turns out because his wife was closer friends to my ex than me, my ex was over hanging out with them a lot. And he decided it was easier to just not be available for me. Have barely had a social life since then. No more social circles. Maybe 1 or 2 friends I see rarely. I don't really include my current partner in with them and keep our friend circles mostly separate. I hang out with one of her friend's husband from time to time, but that's about it, and usually only when she's around too anyway. I keep to myself mostly now. It's lonely, but fuck other people dropping me when I need social support. I can support myself. Story 16. My ex was emotionally abusive and especially nasty to me after we broke up. I had introduced him to mutual friends, and when I broke up with him, he kept contact with them. It's been 10 months, and still I hear through the grapevine that he asks after me. It's all just a way to control the narrative because he knows how awful he was to me and that they'd dislike him if they knew the truth. I find myself distancing myself more and more because it feels like people just don't get why I'd feel so uncomfortable around him and think I'm just holding a grudge. On top of this, my best friend of 4 years was nowhere to be found when the relationship ended. It was a horrible time and I needed her support, but she was always too busy. I've recently come to realize that she never really was there for me when things got tough and generally expected me to get over it. I'm trying to distance myself from her now too, and it's kinda devastating TBH. Story 17. I had male friends that were in the apartment next to mine. The apartments had ceiling tiles. Found out years later that they would watch me shower by peeking into my bathroom by lifting the ceiling tiles. I knew them for over 20 years. I trusted them. I just can't forgive them. Story 18. My mom. One Christmas, she told me that she didn't love me and that I was the biggest mistake of her life, and if she could do it over again, she would have aborted me. Haven't spoken to her in 11 years and she texts every once in a while, but I don't respond. Last year on Easter she invited me over for pacha and asked for forgiveness. The funny thing is she has no idea what she's asking me to forgive her for, and that I already have. I can't carry around that burden for someone like that. I have to live with the burden that my own mother has made me feel that I am unlovable and undeserving of love. As a mother myself, there is nothing that my child could do to ever make me say such horrible things. People say, well, at least you have a mom. That's not what a mom is. I know that. She was abusive in every sense of the word. Story 19. Dad was somewhat involved, but mostly absent after the divorce. I ended up moving in with him at 17 because my mom was manic depressive. Living with Dad was like having a roommate. Charged me rent when I turned 18, and was pressuring me to move out with 2 jobs at minimum wage income. He did it when he was my age, something about bootstraps, so I should too, right? Gave me a deadline as he was selling the house, and said I should get another job and find some roommates so I don't end up homeless. The prospect of working 3 jobs just to break even and survive made me super depressed, and I ended up getting fired from one of my jobs for being late because I could barely get out of bed in the morning. He'd have been fine if I ended up homeless, said it'd be a good learning experience as I needed a wake-up call. I moved back in with Mom to avoid that. Now I'm 27 and am doing great in comparison, and I don't really talk to him. He has a new family, 4th wife, my mom was the first, remodeled a bigger house with custom rooms that his stepdaughters are welcome to live in as long as they want, and he wonders why I don't come around or communicate with him more. They go on vacations and got brand new cars when they got their licenses. I got an $1,800 POS that he went halvesies with me for. I make appearances at family functions, but didn't do shit for him on Father's Day, and I don't plan on it anytime soon till he decides something's wrong, but he seems fine with radio silence. My mom told me he was angry when he found out she was pregnant with me, as he didn't want another child. Pretty sure he's maintained that attitude my whole life. Story 20. Had a very close friend that used to talk shit about one of her closest friends. And so I'd always do the, oh yeah, that's crazy she does that, supportive thing. And then down the line, I think we must have had a fight, and then she told her friend that I was the one talking shit about her, and basically sent her angry friend after me. When I confronted my friend, she defended herself. I did say those things, but you agreed with me. It's nothing like a lot of other posts here, but it was borderline a LDR, and it really broke my heart at the time. She tried to rekindle at least a friendship, and I just let it fizzle out because fuck any manipulative dastardly asshole that'd do that out of spite. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Basic Spoon for more daily Reddit content.